Okay, I'm live. Good lord, that was a lot. Do I have. Can people hear me? Can I hear me? Alright, I think that. I hope that works. We're going to try this way because Facebook really did not like that. Can I invite people? What does this do? Okay, so this is. I don't want that. I want to do this. We're going to send this video link to Facebook, and then I'm going to get started because this is the best way that I know how to do this, which means people won't see it because the algorithm really doesn't like taking people off of Facebook. But if Facebook Live isn't going to work, I don't know what else to do. Okay, just give me another second so I can post this. I don't really want to do it this way, but I'm going to do it this way anyways. And there. Maybe people will see it, maybe people won't. It's my hope. So I'm just going to be here, and I'm just going to be talking for a little bit, and hopefully this doesn't crash the way that the Facebook thing did twice. So my name is John McDonald. Hello. If you're here, perhaps you've been to my YouTube channel before, or perhaps this is your first visit. Welcome. I am a queer playwright in Portland, Oregon, and I'm doing a series of videos talking about my art practice, but specifically talking about my art practice in theater as it relates to Cobblestone Kingdom, a gay forest fairy tale, which I'll be having a Kickstarter for in January. Now, when I say art practice, I will be referring to my theatrical art practice, but anyone that knows me knows I have my fingers in several pies going at once. I have my tabletop stuff. I have the audio drama, which season 2 will be getting started here in January. Actually, the writing, not the filming, and other projects I'm working on. But I want to specifically talk a little bit about Cobblestone Kingdom, about my art practice. I made a list of a couple of things. I've got the chat on. If I get comments that are really good, I'm hoping I'll be able to come back to them and answer them. If you have questions about Cobblestone Kingdom, I want people to feel like they can ask questions. It's really important to me. A big part of my art practice is kind of demystifying theater and making theater feel like something more accessible. A big thing in my art practice is creating more different types of characters, especially heroes that aren't just kind of the white, cisgendered, straight, able-bodied heroes that we always see. Specifically in Cobblestone Kingdom, I've done my best to erase gendered language. There are some spots where it really happens. And I got really annoyed that I couldn't figure out how to write out of it. But it's one of those things where if someone discovers this play and they want to do it, I've been really explicit about this is a queer fairy tale. So as long as that queerness is present, I'm likely to give the okay onto something. Like making it heteronormative because you want to do a female presenting Cinderella and a male identified male presenting Prince. I'm probably not going to be okay with that because there's tons of other Cinderellas out there. Part of it is that I want a Cinderella story that's for people like me. I want a Cinderella story for the other. We have a ton of Cinderella stories in the world. It's one of the most adapted things, but it's always adapted for straight people. I mean, except for Jennifer Coolidge as the evil stepmom in the Hilary Duff one, I feel like Cinderella is one of those things that's very, very straight leaning. And for me, and I've gotten this question about, well, what's different about this? Why are you adapting it? The fact there isn't a queer Cinderella is kind of a strange thing to me. And it's not a straight one-to-one adaptation. It's not just I've looked at Roger Hammerstein, I've looked at the Julie Andrews or the Brandy Whitney Houston version just copied that and made it, for gay people. I put new characters in. I've made it slightly more interactive. I've given it a lot of kind of humor and queerness outside of just the love story. Um, I think it's one of those things where in my art practice in theater, whenever I adapt, I'm always thinking about who can play this and who can see it. For me, it's really important that people can see themselves in my work or know that it's open enough where if they don't completely see themselves, that there's some wiggle room that they can wiggle into the role, as it were. I never want to just make a queer adaptation um, for the sake of making queer adaptation. There's reasons to do that, I'm sure. But for me, this is about creating space to kind of examine the idea of why does Cinderella need to be an orphan? You know, like does Cinderella need to be kind of adrift and unmoored from the classic patriarchal family archetype in order to find their prince? Does the evil in the universe have to be an evil stepmother? In this case, no. In this case, um, my work is more about internal self doubt. It's more about the kind of queer dialogue with yourself of wondering if you're really good enough, wondering if you're ever going to be good enough, and the feeling of waiting is very present for a long time in Act One and most of Act Two. Um, the idea of giving yourself permission to hope and a dream is there, and it's not really an external thing. There's no evil stepmom in this. There are evil characters because evil characters are just fun to write as a gay person. Um, but a lot of the evil in it is kind of an internalized self doubt. There's also magic because it's fun to write magic in a sword and sorcery universe, which is where Cinderella classically is set. Um, but it's also, it's a queer fairy tale. It's a queer adaptation. Adaptation is a long and storied, celebrated thing in the world. And there are lots of Cinderella stories. I guess what I want to do is I want to like help you figure out why you should choose this one to support. And mostly it's because it's brand spanking new and it's because I really want the support. Um, but I think it's, I've been working on this project now since 2016, give or take. This is one of the first plays that I really wrote, and it's on version 3 now. And that's pretty on par for most theater things. Most theater things don't come fully formed out of the oven. Wicked got changed on its way to Broadway, for instance. So it's one of those things where, in the Kickstarter especially, and I'll probably explain this, is theater is kind of never done. You can see it in a lot of Stephen Sondheim's work, especially with Company, and how Company always seems to be being reinvented just a little, including the gender bend one, which is really cool. Theater is a kind of thing that is impermanent, where with movies and TV, once it's filmed and it's there, it's not going to be changed, generally speaking. Um, with theater, there's always a bit of room for improvement. There's always room for collaboration. There's always something about theater that makes work a little less permanent. And that's hard to say as a playwright because I want my words to stay my words. But in so much as I have the power in the story I'm telling to say something and have a message, um, it's really about the collaboration of getting that message out. And in the case of Cobblestone Kingdom, the message isn't just about the love story. The love story is great. I love the love story. And I'm going to talk next week about why the love story itself is important and how I really, really mess with that. because I really mess with it, and it's really important the way that I do. Um, but just in general, with the idea of why does adaptation matter? Why does this adaptation matter? Why now? Why my art practice? Um, the answer really has a lot to do with filling in a space that hasn't been filled in yet, or hasn't been filled in a way where it's really been out there. Um, because if there's been queer adaptations of Cinderella, I've never seen them, never heard about them, never come across them. Um, and so trying to put it out there, I don't want to devalue anyone else's work that has been working on it, but this is the first time hearing of it. Um, and for me specifically, doing my best to take gender language out of the play, which was really difficult to do, and leaving space for trans actors and actresses, people that are androgynous, people that are agender, um, actually have a place where they can become the hero and have a love story, or the heroine and have a love story, or for people that just love playing unrepentant evil characters. Because in this play, my characters that are evil are sassy and unrepentantly evil. I'm not apologizing for that, because I think some of the best characters that are evil just don't apologize for being so, and so that's really important to me, specifically in this. So that's a little look into the villains of this piece, which are not the evil stepmother, which is a traditional Cinderella thing. Well, not traditional, Disney-fied traditional Cinderella thing. Um, my evil characters are an evil knight in the kingdom, whose name is Marceline, who I wrote as female presenting and will probably be written as an alto. So for a really great femme tenor that wants to do it, it's probably within your range. And then I've got a couple. I've got two witches, Mr. and Mrs. Raven, that do a lot of makeup work in Act One, and then in Act Two, we're just kind of hanging about being problematic. And I think they're fun. They're kind of fun in that Shakespeare way, where like you want something bad to happen to them, but you kind of cackle when they talk. And so beyond queering Cinderella and the Prince characters, Cinderella, whose name is Seven, um, I kind of mess with the idea of the formula of you need the evil stepmother. Not to say it's not great sometimes, like Jennifer Coolidge, Angelica Houston, Kate Blanchett, all did great jobs as evil stepmoms. Like, not complaining about that at all. But that's something that makes this difference. Genderqueer sprite fairy characters in colored garb that do a very good, like, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern vibe kind of thing, where it could be they know they're in a play and they interact more with the audience. Interaction with the audience, I wanted more of. I didn't just want this to be something where you're going to sit down, you're going to watch it, and that's it. I want this to be a thing where you become a little invested, that you feel like you're watching something old school. I never want to go so far afield of theater that you have to like learn how to watch my plays. There's a place for that, but it's not in my theater art practice. In my theater art practice, it's really about as much accessibility as possible. And I'm always working to perfect that more. Um, Theater itself really wasn't having a conversation for a long time about accessibility, and that's changing now, which is great. But in my art practice, specifically for what I can do for the theater world, it's important to me to make space um, for new actors, new voices. It's important to me to make space for differently abled people. It's important for me to make space for different queer identities and different races. And I know that I have some limitations because I come at this as a LGBT cisgendered Caucasian male, but I'm doing my best. And of course, if you ever read one of my plays and you're like, that's outrageous, then that's something to talk about, because I want to make sure that I'm always doing the best I can. Specifically for Cobblestone Kingdom, it's really important to me that the queerness stay queer. Um, and that could be a bit of a struggle, because perhaps I might end up with a cast where it's a female to male actor playing the prince and a male to female playing Cinderella. And at that point, I have to decide. Uh, I think at that point, I would let that happen because there's still an element of queerness to it. But I'd have to figure out how to make sure people didn't just think they were watching a traditional Cinderella play with new music. And I think that's part of the struggle of it, is how we do the voices. I wrote a play where there was a character who transitioned in the middle of the play, and there was a whole point about how their name changed and how their outfit changed. Um, and that's really hard to write because there's not a lot of guide for how to actually write that, other than making sure it's consistent when you do it. Um, so part of the struggle of this is how do all different queer types of actors feel comfortable in the roles, taking the roles, understanding the queerness itself. For me, as a cis male, I would like um, a male Cinderella character and a male Prince Hawk. But a sapphic love story with Princess Hawk or Princess Helen, maybe, I don't know, and a female presenting Cinderella, that could be very powerful. And I'm really open to that. Um, so I think for me, in trying to do this, there's a lot of questions, but there are a lot of good questions to struggle with. And I want this adaptation to be something where it kind of marks the idea that queer adaptation is really a valuable thing, that it can be done really well, um, and that there is space for more people in these kind of fantasy worlds that we build where there, weirdly enough, aren't a lot of mainstream queer characters in those worlds. Like, there's queer coding, and there's like fan fiction and fan art, which is fine, but the stories themselves don't really have a lot of queer people. And it still feels a little revolutionary to be doing a queer Cinderella story, um, which is important to me. It's important for me to put a love story out that I would want to see as a theater patron. And so that is me rambling about why this project, why adaptation matters. I think adaptation is a very valuable tool, not just to teach people um, how to write, but also in getting people into seeing the work. Because if I say the word Cinderella, you have some idea of what the story is about, even if I change it in some ways, even if I bring more questions to the forefront. If I say Cinderella, you're pretty aware of what that is. Most people are 95%, I would say. But then that 5% might come because they hear it's a queer fairy tale, or it's set in a forest because it's a very foresty vibe. Because I like that vibe for Cinderella. Um, yeah, so that is kind of it. I'm going to check Facebook to see if there are any questions or anything. I'm doing this later on Instagram too, and I'm probably going to pop this on Twitter for people that want to hear my ramblings. And I've been rambling for almost 20 minutes. I'm very proud of myself, actually. And so I'm talking about that next week when I do this. I'm not sure what day I'm going to do this. Maybe Monday. I don't know if I have it written down right. I'm going to talk about some of the erotic and some of the ideas of consent that I've added into this. The idea of the monologue of queerness, as I call it. And I'm going to talk more about how an audience is brought into theater in my theater practice, because I think it's something to talk about quite a bit in some length. But also comments, and comments under the video after it's posted, um, as long as they're not from like bots or something, because I've had that. I'm more than willing to add them into my next video. I want this to be interactive. I know this is kind of a weird time of day to do it, but this is the time that I had today. And so I am trying to make sure that I do the best I can, making it the best for people that it can be. Um, and so I think that's where I'm going to end today before I ramble too much. But yeah, Cobblestone Kingdom keep an eye out. Things are coming in January for a Kickstarter. Ideally, it'll be a fully true funded queer theater experience. It is a bit of money I'm asking for. I'm very realistic about it because for me, it's also important to pay my actors as best I can. Um, and so I'll be looking at getting some grant funding when I do it too. But a large portion of funding will be coming from the Kickstarter, and I'm going to be asking for 4,200, and that's going to seem like a lot, but theater is really expensive to do, and even doing like a bare bones version of this, it's going to take money, and I can't do it without you. I can't do it without your friends. I can't do it without people coming alongside and saying, "This really excites me," and I hope it does, and I hope that I can um, really talk to you and really not just convince you that it's exciting, but also give you something that really inspires you. That's my hope. And that's my goal. And I want this to be a really great love story that we all think about and remember. And I want you to shed a tear the way that I do when I do the. I have a really great duet waltz song, and I want people to really get into it. Is my hope. So thank you so much for watching, either live or if you're watching later. Um, and thank you so much for being part of this. I hope that you come to be a part of the Cobblestone Kingdom family and that I'll see you again in the future. All right. Have a great day. Bye.